There is the white flag for number 3, John Rutherford. Pick it up, Ron Carroll.
Okay, Sid, and here he comes right now from that number 25th position in the starting field. Johnny Rutherford wins, or is about to win, his first 500 over to Howdy Bell in turn 2.
I'm really happy for Johnny and Betty because they're great people, and he likes homemade strawberry ice cream, incidentally, as he heads up the backstretch to Jerry Baker.
He just now goes past us, Howdy, heading in toward number 3, and as you say, one super guy apparently off to the best win of his career. Doug?
The crowd on its feet, waving their hats, waving their arms, as the red, white, and blue helmet of Johnny Rutherford and the bright orange car goes streaking by over into turn number 4. Here's Jim Shelton.
Handsome driver, winning smile, and Johnny Rutherford. And here to call the winner is the voice of the 500, Sid Collins.
And here's the checkered flag for Johnny Rutherford, winner of the 1974 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
From ISM Raceway in Avondale, Arizona, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Not suggesting it's a make or break time, but certainly some championship contenders could fall by the wayside by the time we get to the Indianapolis 500 in late May. We are in the midst of a busy stretch for the Verizon IndyCar Series. The next stop, the latest one, here at historic Long Beach. Hello, everyone. I'm Mark James. Green flag flies on session number 1 as we excitedly prepare for the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. And Anders Krohn, we go back to last Saturday night in Phoenix at ISM Raceway. And what a show, what a call late by Tim Cindric to give Joseph Newgarden some fresh Firestone firehawks. He made the most of it, pulled off a big win for Team Penske, and thrust himself to the top of the leaderboard of the championship.
Yeah, and I take my hat off to Tim Cindric for rolling that dice, because it would have been so easy for him to just leave Joseph Newgarden out in the lead and try to protect that. But instead of that, they truly did roll the dice, and a call that I was pretty animated about at the time, thinking it was the wrong call. But then Joseph Newgarden, with the restart that he had, 2 passes around the outside into turn 1, and then 2 laps later got by Robbie Wickens. I mean, fair play to Robbie Wickens for hanging onto that car with over 50-lap old tires. And as we all know, and now with the new Aero kit, tire degradation is higher than it's ever been. And so the way he managed to hang on to that car for such a long time in his first oval experience ever was something astonishing to watch at ISM Raceway. But obviously a completely different complexion coming up here, and I think we're going to see a lot more of a similar race weekend as we did in St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg, we had 366 overtakes. Let's see if we can match that here in Long Beach.
Firestone bringing the exact same compound, by the way, that they used in St. Petersburg, hoping for a similar result. Let's face it, Robert Wickens, a rookie in name only. What a debut here in 2018 in the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Yeah, he is a rookie in name only, but I will say this to his defense. Yeah, he may not be a rookie because he's done 6 years in DTM. He was the World Series by Renault champion, where he outbeat drivers like Daniel Ricciardo, Jean-Eric Verne, all the drivers that have made it, obviously Ricciardo onto F1. But I think the biggest thing is the fact that DTM cars, where he's been driving the last 6 years, has so much downforce. It's actually a lot more similar to an older style Indy car than the current one we have right now. The one we have right now, a lot more free, moves a lot more, so the adjustment for him would have actually been a lot easier with last year's car compared to this year's car. So I give him all the credit in just being able to manhandle this car and drive it the way that he has. And I think we all expected that he was going to be strong in the streets of St. Petersburg, but to go out and do what he did at ISM Raceway, now that's incredible.
It is a beautiful day, a beautiful way to start the day on the streets of Long Beach, California. A couple of pit reporters helping dig up some stories and kind of set the stage for the weekend. One of them could also update us on the conditions. It's Dave first. Hello, Dave.
I could probably update you on the conditions in about 5 seconds. How about sunny and beautiful? It is absolutely gorgeous here to start this Long Beach weekend. 35th time that the IndyCar Series has raced here, either be it CART or Champ Car, the Verizon IndyCar Series. Air temperature at 68 degrees. And it's really not expected to go up beyond that, really, maybe 70, 72, 73 degrees by this afternoon's second practice. Track temperature at 77 degrees right now. Humidity levels way down at 21%. Just a whisk of wind right now. A big change from what we had yesterday as we arrived here in the Long Beach area when the wind was really coming from the north. But anyway, a great way to start things, to kick things off here on the streets of Long Beach. As we continue, just a quick update on pit road. Most of the drivers have gone out and done an installation lap. That was the sound of Sebastian Bourdais returning back to pit road to begin this practice session. And right now, I'm getting a good look at Jack Harvey, Michael Shank Racing back this weekend. And Jack Harvey is going to take an opportunity. Fires up the engine and lets it go. So Jack Harvey now out on his installation lap, but we're just getting settled in here for this 45-minute practice session, Mark Janes, getting things kicked off in this Long Beach weekend.
Okay, Dave, thanks very much. I want to welcome in the newest member of our broadcast crew going to join us throughout the course of this day. We welcome Stephen Blakely on pit road. Stephen?
Yeah, and there's all kinds of folks down here checking things out, and we got an opportunity to find Stephen Wilson down here. And Stephen, tell us what brings you here to Long Beach.
Yeah, it's great to be back in Long Beach. I haven't been here to this event for a couple of years, and it's just great to be at the IndyCar race weekends as I'm getting ready to prepare for the Indy 500 in May. So it's just good to hang around, watch the team, see how they are interacting with each other, and kind of get some insight as we sort of head into May.
Yeah, of course, the car all new in 2018. Are you learning anything about that this weekend?
Yeah, it's tough to learn something here at Long Beach that will apply at Indy, but, especially coming off of Phoenix, there's still conversations going on about, what happened there and how that's going to affect things. So it's just good to be around him and sort of listen in and be a sponge and learn as much as possible, really.
And tell us about the preparations for your Indy 500 program.
It's been a lot of time to think about it, that's for sure. We get the deal done in October last year. It just sort of it gave me a lot of time to prepare. I've tried to use that time as best I can to just be as ready as possible. So, really worked on the fitness over the winter, stepped that up. I feel like that's at a really good level. And, watching film and watching tape and looking back at my old notes from 2016 and, just like I said, using the time to my advantage and, just trying to be as ready as possible. So, it's kind of interesting because, the new car is going to definitely throw a bit of a curveball in there. We're kind of not sure what to expect, whether Honda and Chevy, how that's going to match up, and then also how our setups from the previous years are going to work. So there's a little bit of unknown there. I can't wait to just get in the car and find out for myself. And, really excited to be working with Driven to Save Lives, Indiana Donor Network again, further in that campaign and that mission. And, just excited, looking forward to it. I hope the fans are too.
You gotta love being down here by that sound. Best of luck in May.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Stephen Wilson down here on pit road. Back to you guys.
Yeah, it's a great story. Of course, a year ago that had everything all secured, Anders, for the Indianapolis 500 and stepped aside in favor of Fernando Alonso. And it's nice to see that loyalty pay off a year later for one of the nicest guys you'll see in the paddock in Steph Wilson.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be a little bit biased because I'm obviously very close friends with Stephen, but no.
That's not what he says.
Oh, I could say some things. No, but it's great, and Andretti Autosport really did step up and have helped tremendously, and being able to secure it this early on for Stefan has really helped him, as he said, prepare for it. So I think it'll just be a great month of May, and I think now with all the announcements we're seeing, it's going to be back to bumping again for the race, which is brilliant news.
Well, a guest to the broadcast booth. He's with us so often of late. He's kind of an honorary member of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network. One of the most respected and well-liked motorsports journalists anywhere in the land, and has become a very, very good friend of ours. And it was part of this event in its infancy, if you will. I'm not dating him. I'm just simply.
I was wondering if you were trying to say nicely, I'm old.
We're welcoming Louis Frank to the broadcast booth. Louis, welcome. Great to see you.
It is my great pleasure to be here. And in Long Beach, the weather, the sun, everybody's in a great mood now. Till the other bumping starts.
Now, one thing's for sure, the preparation for this event, it literally takes weeks, if not months. They start planning, I'm sure, as soon as the dust settles on the previous year. But we saw some releases earlier this week for the folks here. Hospitality sales at an all-time high, and ticket sales are up too.
And I believe there was at the Walk of Fame announcement, I'm pretty sure I heard that they've extended this race another 5 years, which is great news. People come out here, even if you don't like race cars, and I don't know why you wouldn't like race cars. They've got battles of the bands. They've got exhibits here. So come on, if you're within earshot of Long Beach, you need to come down, and you'll just have fun. And you'll see some great racing.
So your thoughts and impressions from afar, if you will, with this new aero package and the racing that we've seen through the first 2 races of the season.
Well, I was talking to some of the Dallara people earlier, and this reduction in downforce has put the cars back in the driver's hands. And as Andrews was saying earlier, though, it's at St. Pete, the rookies, some of them were very fast because their repertoire of reflexes, as Johnny Rutherford used to say, they were ready. They didn't have to adjust. And so I think we're going to see some, as one of the Dallara guys said, there's going to be some bold guys making some bold moves.
Anders Krohn, a couple of guys back in the saddle, if you will. Zachary Clayman DeMello is here this weekend. We also see Jack Harvey in the 60. Good to see Jack in the car. Of course, Sirius and XM sponsorship on that car, 209 and 214. Where you can always catch Verizon IndyCar Series events, as I slip in a shameless plug there. And a guy that we spent some time with in Phoenix, he joined us in the broadcast booth for the warm-up session back in the 20 for Ed Carpenter. I came away impressed with Jordan King. He's a great guy. We enjoyed spending time with him.
Yeah, I did as well, and I really liked his mindset overall coming into this Verizon IndyCar Series campaign with no preconceived notions. We've seen several drivers come over from Europe, from GP2 especially, or Formula One even, with a very sort of set mindset on exactly here's how I want the car to be driven, and here's how I want the engineers to tune the car to be. But it hasn't typically worked for the Firestone tire, or it hasn't worked for this type of track, or it hasn't worked for this type of chassis. But what really impressed me with Jordan King was just his willingness to learn and be completely open to input from all the engineers and team managers. And as a result, I mean, the guy set the track record at St. Pete, and I mean, was just absolutely flying. So I've been very, very impressed with him so far. His whole mindset, and obviously he's got talent behind the wheel as well.
Some changes made on the engineering side of that race team, Anders, because the obvious, Ed Carpenter didn't qualify particularly well, but ended up having a great race.
At ISM Raceway.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just Ed's MO, really, is he just sits there quietly, and I almost felt bad looking at the end result because we barely talked about him all night, but that's actually a testament to how good of a race he had, in that he was never in the wars, he was never bumping anyone, he was just constantly grinding it out, figuring out the pit strategies, and he eventually during the course of the race got ahead of the game on pit strategy and started stopping a bit early, and that got him to jump and finish 7th. So great call for that entire crew, and good run for Ed Carpenter.
He will call the iconic hairpin home during qualifying and the race this weekend. But until then, he'll be helping us out on pit road. Let's welcome in Nick Yeoman.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Mark Janes, it is wonderful to be back here in Long Beach for the 44th running of the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. Down here in the pit of what has been, I think, the story of the season so far, and that is Robert Wickens. Hasn't won a race yet, but boy, he has been close, and Pierce Phillips just sent the Canadian driver Robert Wickens onto the racetrack for the first time, so we will see what has been the story of the year, getting up to speed so far Wickens looked pretty confident hopping into that car for this practice session. Of course, came so close to winning at St. Petersburg and then at Phoenix 1 week ago, trying to hold off Joseph Newgarden. And that team getting set to go rolling here, Mark, for this 45-minute practice session. Robert Wickens and a lot of drivers now starting to get out of the racetrack as things starting to pick up here on a beautiful Friday here in Long Beach. Dave first.
Yeah, all the rookies get an extra set of tires, and that leaves some of the veterans right now to wait just a bit here on pit road to begin their practice session here with Mike Hull, Managing Director, Chip Ganassi Racing, overlooking at bright blue and orange PNC Bank machine. Scott Dixon sitting in the car. You might be sitting for a while. You guys are kind of pacing yourself in this practice session.
We'll just kind of wait for the rubber to come up a little bit, and then we'll go. Long Beach is not the same every year, so we'll have to discover what bumps are there and which bumps are brand new for us.
I was going to say, explain that. What do you mean when you say Long Beach isn't the same every year?
You just simply, it's no different than where you live. The streets where you drive, especially from the Midwest or back east, they change during the winter. And with the way the ground shakes in California, they change in California also. So, typically a race driver that's a good street racer doesn't always drive conventionally. They try to utilize the terrain to their advantage more. And so Scott spent quite a bit of time walking around last night and trying to understand how to drive this place.
Scott's a former champion here at Long Beach. He knows his way around here. So perhaps he'll pick up his second this weekend. Take me back to Phoenix last weekend. The job that this team did, not only Scott, not only you guys up here in the pit stand, but the Wolfpack, the guys that are jumping over the wall and servicing this car, you guys made up a lot of ground through the course of the evening. Started 17th, came home with the top 5 finish.
Well, Dale Earnhardt is famous for one statement on the grid to his guys, and he always said to them, this is just a place to start. You never want to start 17th on a 1 mile oval, but we did. And the Wolfpack, as you said, did a terrific job. And we leaped a few people in the pits on each of our stops. And what we tried to do from the timing stand was try to find open track position when we stopped under green. So when we leave the pit lane, it's up maybe just 2, 3, 4 laps. We got a clear run right there, and that makes up a big amount of track position also. And then Scott did the rest. He didn't get credit for passing a lot of people until the race was over. The focus was on Alexander Rossi, who did a fantastic job. But Scott, I think, did an equally good job on Saturday night, and for as bad as we sucked in qualifying, the race turned out really well for us.
You kept working on it. By the way, red flag is out. If you're following us on the live streaming right now, it looks like Gabby Chavez has come to a stop at the hairpin here at Long Beach. But you guys kept working throughout, even that night practice after qualifying. You guys found a little bit of something that night.
Well, what happened there was we were terrible in the daylight, and we were actually terrible when the night practice started. It was actually 50 minutes of track time because the first 10 minutes was pit stop practice. And it wasn't until about 40 minutes into that session when everything came to us there, and we started with that setup in the race, and we raced well.
Overall, I mean, who knows what's going to happen to the season finale in Sonoma come several months from now, but you might look back at a race like Phoenix. I hate to talk points racing. It's only the second race of the season. Man, you guys picked up a lot of points at Phoenix.
Well, it's not like the PGA Tour where you're just trying to keep your card. You want to win every time you race in this series, and when you don't, because that's what you're focusing on, it's disappointing. But there are two things that you really want to do in this series, and one is win the Indy 500, and the other one is to win the championship. And you want to be introduced as a champion of each of those places, or each of those venues, and we're working hard to do both.
Good luck this weekend. Hopefully Scott Dixon finds victory lane once again, and you guys as well.
Well, Long Beach has such terrific lineage. The electricity that's here is maybe unequal for a lot of sporting events, so it's a lot of fun to race here.
A lot of history here. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Again, Mike Hall, Managing Director of Chip Ganassi Racing. Looks like the AMR guys are trying to restart Gabby Chavez there in the hairpin. For now, though, more down on pit lane. Just further down, our Nick Yeoman.
We're at the head of pit lane, Dave, first, and we're here with Dale Coyne, of course, car owner. 2 cars this weekend, Zachary Claman-DeMello, and, of course, the St. Petersburg winner, Sebastian Bourdais. Dale, Sebastian knows his way around Long Beach here. Quite a few wins in the Champ Car days. How confident do you feel like he is and this team is heading into this weekend?
I think we still have a few things to find out. You know, we weren't the fastest car at St. Pete. We got lucky in one, but we were in position and had top 3 or 4 car. So we'll see if we've learned a few things over the couple weeks here in our simulations and that, and see what we can do here.
A year ago, it was kind of the talk of the paddock in the offseason when you reunited Craig Hampson with this team and Olivier Boisson. Have they exceeded your expectations? Because this team out the gates for 2 straight seasons, you guys have been on fire.
No, I think it's been great. I think it's you know, when you put a good, lean, hungry group of people together that all get along as well as these 3 guys do, it makes for some magic.
All right, that's Dale Coyne on the pit box here for Sebastian Bourdais, Mark Janes. Of course, the winner at start the season at St. Petersburg, and I think that team looks like they could be a championship contender all year long. Showed some great pace, grabbing the pole last week in Phoenix as well. So the 18 bunch with that Sealmaster sponsorship here at Pit Out, they've got the best seat in the house. They'll be watching Sebastian head out on the racetrack here shortly for practice 1.
And you mentioned his prowess here at Long Beach, 05, 06, 07. The three-peat under the Champ Car banner. Sebastian Bourdais won 3 consecutive races. An update on the 88 of Gabby Chavez from Stephen Blakesley.
Yeah, so our 2014 Indy Lights winner here at Long Beach, Gabby Chavez, getting to participate in this rookie practice, this early practice. We do have 3 drivers in this field that have never raced here in anything, as of course there's 6 different series running here this weekend. So most of our grid has experience in one way or another on the streets of Long Beach, but we're hearing that it is a throttle issue. They were having a high idle on this Chevrolet for Harding Racing. So the crew going to work on the number 88 ride, and we'll give you an update when we have one.
Should get back to green flag conditions momentarily. We'll step away for now as preparation continues for the race here on the streets of Long Beach. You're listening to the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Firestone presents Legendary Drives. The scariest thing in sports is a left turn, taking it over 220 miles an hour. Turn 1 at the Indy 500 demands everything a tire's got, putting 2.5 G's on them for 4 seconds. Once it's over, they only have to do it 199 more times. And if Firestone tires are so dependable they can handle turn 1, they'll handle any turn you need to make. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone, the tire that drives IndyCar legends.
The road to the Indy 500 starts now.
Green.
The Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama, presented by America's First, returns to world-famous Barber Motorsports Park, April 20th through 22nd. The fastest race car drivers in the world will do battle armed with 700 horsepower and 60...
Go back-to-back, went back-to-back-to-back, Sebastian Bourdais, and I would say, given the success overall that Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports has had to start the season, Anders Groen, not out of the question that the mayor of Hinchtown could go back-to-back here on the streets of Long Beach.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore, and we knew that the street courses is what that team has figured out, and then suddenly they came out to ISM Raceway and had their short oval game sorted out, and I know that was their biggest worry, and they actually went into that weekend just hoping to survive it. So I know that they put a lot of emphasis into this weekend, knowing just how strong their road course or street course game is, rather, because this track is somewhat applicable to the streets of St. Petersburg. The majority of the corners here, excepting of course the hairpin and the fountain corner, are all a lot faster than St. Pete, but still with the amount of bumps there are and undulations here, it's actually quite a bit similar to that in the streets of St. Petersburg. And as we all saw, they had a brilliant setup on the car of Robert Wickens and James Hinchcliffe during that race, and probably the only kink in their armor as it pertains to the street course is that their car wasn't as strong as that of Andretti Autosport in traffic. If you looked at Alexander Rossi in traffic at the streets of St. Petersburg, he was able to get so close to the cars ahead of him and therefore would get really, really good runs. So that's probably the only thing, if I'm SPM right now, I'm looking at them and saying, on outright pace, yes, we have definitely, potentially the quickest car on the grid, but we just need to work on it in traffic.
Rossi is just 5 points back of Newgarden. The win vaulted Joseph 6 positions back into the lead. But Rossi, the only driver with 2 podiums in the first 2 races, and I maintain that I won't say legitimacy, that's too strong a word, but I think he's starting to build a championship contender's mindset going back to the second half of last season, especially with his dominant performance at Watkins Glen.
And don't forget, he lapped the field twice at
right.
ISM Raceway.
That's right.
He made that mistake in pit lane, then unlapped himself from being a lap down, and then drove through the field yet again to finish on that podium. So he was by far and away the quickest car on track at ISM Raceway. And what I'm really liking from Alexander Rossi is just the steely determination he drives with and the authority that he drives with. As you said, he had that win at Watkins Glen, and that was great. But what I'm seeing from him is every single weekend he's strong. He never has an off weekend anymore, and I think that's what you see in the run of results that he's had now, and the fact that he's barely been outside the top 5 from essentially the second half of the season last year going into this season. So I absolutely think he's going to be a championship contender this year. And we just saw how strong he was at the 500 last year. Again, another pit lane error there. But outside of that, I mean, the guy has been an absolute machine as of late, and I think we're going to see a lot from him this year.
Lewis Frank also in the booth with us for the show. And Lewis, while every driver obviously wants to win the Indianapolis 500, others have more personal goals. I'll never forget Graham Rahal's win at Mid-Ohio, for instance, a place where he grew up. But let's face it, I think outside of Indianapolis, not to take anything away from the rest of the venues or the rest of the races, tell us why this seems to be number 2 on the list of priorities for most drivers. Long Beach, I'm talking about.
Absolutely. This was, I remember when the town wasn't so nice and they called this the Monte Carlo. Now, everything is being built, but this is a race that started out, it started out Formula 5000, but it started out as a Formula 1 race. It has that cachet. Mario Andretti won here in F1. This is the marquee street race. And I'm old, Anders. So when there wasn't street racing until Long Beach. I mean, before I was born in the turn of the 20th century. But when they brought this track out, and then everyone started to copy. And if there was no Long Beach, there wouldn't be a St. Pete. And the videos, okay, I'm so on radio, but the videos that you see, everybody wants to win here. I mean, all the time, yes, but this is almost as good as an Indy win.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree anymore. I drove here back in 2011, and the feeling you have when you go around this place is just, it's fantastic. I mean, for a street course, it's so open, so winding, and to your point, you really feel that history. When you're driving around here, you really feel that, okay, it's not the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but you really do feel that history, and it is important. And I don't know a driver that doesn't love this track. It is just so good. Everything about it. I'm looking right now at the shot going from turn 7 up to turn 8, the way you crest that hill and then bend the car into turn 8 and have to be so precise with all your inputs. And then the braking zone for turn 9, which is so bumpy, and you have to get it exactly right on the bumps to get it into that corner. The entire track is just so beautifully laid out that when you lay down a fast lap around this place, it's so rewarding, and it gives you such a good feeling in the car.
You go from such long speeds on the shoreline drive, and then you got a hairpin, and I've seen many accidents in the hairpin. You go to 5-10 miles an hour, and you got to have patience. You got to pick your spots, and again, you got different surfaces and the bumps, as Mike Hull said. I mean, this, you know what? Again, with the low downforce, this challenges the driver. So on top of the patina of the win. If you win here, you've beaten the track and the other drivers.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much temptation. And to your point about the hairpin, I mean, how easy is it as a driver to look at that hairpin if you have a car that's 2-3 car lengths ahead of you to say, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. And it always causes a bottleneck. So I couldn't agree anymore. And turn 1 as well. I mean, just how much speed you're able to carry there. It's a completely blind corner. You can carry so much speed into there. this is just a genuinely awesome place. And now, with a reduction in downforce, I mean, they're going down the front straight probably about 185 miles an hour before they have to jump on the binder.
So do they feel a little more comfortable coming in here? I mean, we talked about the streets of St. Petersburg being a blank slate as we see the rear end step out a little bit on Alexander Rossi, and then you go into Phoenix, even though you tested there with a bit of a blank slate. So how much from St. Pete transfers to here? You think quite a bit?
I think quite a bit. I mean, obviously, again, as I mentioned earlier, the majority of the corners here, excepting the hairpin and the fountain corner, are all a little bit quicker than that of St. Petersburg. But the overall balance and setup of the car shouldn't be that much different. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few of these guys maybe going a little bit stiffer overall with their platform here, just because the grip level is a little bit higher than that of St. Petersburg. But aero-wise, again, all these teams are finding that the new package is so light on aero to begin with that they actually have to run as much wing as possible here just to keep the car pinned into the ground. So I think that the mechanical setup's probably not going to be very far off, but I think because of the nature of this track being slightly higher speed than that of St. Petersburg, they're going to have to work a little bit more on their traffic game and being able to not lose so much time in the higher speed corners.
There are 4 or 5, maybe 6 different classes of cars running here this weekend. How much is this racetrack going to change throughout the course of this weekend?
Well, and it's not just that rubber, but it's also Formula Drift that's out there on track, taking over turn 8, 9, 10. Or 9, 10, 11 rather, so that's a completely different type of rubber altogether and something that doesn't mesh very well with the Firestones at all. But then you have Pirelli World Challenge, which obviously Pirelli, and you have the IMSA series with Michelin. They have Continental Tire. They have all these different compounds that have to work with each other, and that's exactly why you see someone like a Scott Dixon sitting in pit lane. Is that there's no lack of rubber, but there's a lack of Firestone rubber, so they're wanting to wait for other teams to go out there and lay down the Firestone rubber to really figure out what their car setup's going to be. Because if you go out there and start tuning the car to a completely different type of rubber than you'll have in the race, then you can completely lead yourself astray.
So we mentioned that iconic hairpin. We've referenced it. Is that the place where you need to be fast here? Is that the one you want to tackle, or do you need to find balance here?
Well, I think you really need to backtrack it. You need to be close enough to someone going into the brake zone for turn 9, and then you need to be able to stay close enough through 9 and 10 to set up for a pass for 11. And then really in 11, it's just a matter of patience. If you go in too narrow into 11, you're going to completely lose the exit and not have a shot at making a pass down the front straight. So the key really is, how do I set myself up in turn 9 to have a good run through 11 that'll then set me up on the push to pass and set up a pass. Now, the good news about Long Beach is turn 1 isn't the only good passing spot. You have turn 9 as well, which is a tremendously good passing opportunity. And also, with as tricky as turn 8 is, if you really push someone, I've gone off track in turn 8 being chased actually by Stephen Wilson in Indy Lights back in the day. It's so easy to over push as we see Alexander Rossi have a bit of an off-track excursion here.
That's a tricky spot, turn number 8. That is where the majority of the issues seem to happen on this racetrack. Is it just the anticipation of wanting to carry as much momentum as you can through there because you know you have that long back straightaway as a reward?
Well, no, it's a deceptive corner because it starts off by being so wide on entry, so you want to just push as far as you possibly can, but it's actually where he's stuck is actually turn 9 there, and the problem with turn 9 is if you hit the bumps and the frequency of the bumps just slightly wrong in the brake zone, the whole front of the car is basically just going to come off the ground, and that's exactly what happened to Alexander Rossi here. He just hit the brakes at the wrong moment and got the bumps wrong, and you see he's just locking up the wheels because the car is bottoming out over the bumps.
Winless a year ago was Ryan Hunter-Reay. Nick Yeoman just 15 points back in the top 5 in points. He's looking for some momentum as we head toward the month of May.
Yeah, and I have a sneaky suspicion that winless streak is going to come to an end very soon because this team has certainly been on it. You mentioned a little bit earlier in the show about how good Alexander Rossi has been with a pair of podiums to start the season. Ryan Hunter-Reay hasn't been too far off, Mark, with 5th place finishes in both the races at St. Petersburg and then at Phoenix, and he's just shot at the top of the charts, P1 here in this practice session, so that DHL Honda is very quick. Hunter-Reay brought that car back to pit lane. They immediately took off the front bonnet because they're working on the dampers and the springs in front of that race car. Not a lot of attention towards the back of that race car. But boy, it has been an impressive start to the season, Mark James. Maybe not a win yet for Andretti Autosport, but certainly that team, which I think kind of had its up and downs in 2016 and 2017 with the Aero Kit challenges, being strapped with the Honda. Now that we've got this Universal Aero kit, I think the smart minds at Andretti Autosport are really starting to show with great starts to the season for both Alexander Rossi and then, of course, Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Under 14 minutes remaining in one of two sessions today. An update on Ed Jones from Stephen Blakeslee.
Yeah, you know, Ed Jones, he was our 2015 winner here in the Indy Lights, the last time the Indy Lights raced here, so he does have a pedigree here. But I think more importantly, last year he did finish in 6th in this event. So now moving over to the NTT Data Honda for Chip Ganassi Racing and making adjustments on both ends of the race car, trying to move this car up the grid just a little bit. Notice they were making some air pressure adjustments on their set of red tires. I don't know if we've seen a whole lot of drivers go out on their reds just yet, but perhaps we'll see that before the session ends, as now Ed Jones heading back onto the speedway. Back to you guys.
20th place finish at ISM Raceway, but he, in all honesty, talking about Ed Jones, Anders, was so much better than that in that race.
He was, and he would have been on the podium so easily in that race had he just kept it on the track, but it was so difficult getting around the lap traffic, I believe, of Spencer Pigot at the time, and he just caught a little bit too much of that dirty air going into turn 3 and 4 and slid right up into the wall. And so easy to do at ISM Raceway. But the job that Ed Jones and in fact the whole Chip Ganassi Racing team did up until that point during that day was one of absolute turnaround. I mean, they qualified so far back, and the way they turned it around, and as Mike Hall said, just kept working, waiting on the car to come around to them. It's so easy to lose patience with that halfway through a race and do a bad mistake. So I think I'll give Ed Jones a lot of credit for that. It's not like him to make a mistake like that, and I doubt we'll see one again for a long time from him.
When he and Max Chilton first came here to Indy Lights as teammates, I think Chilton was probably the more heralded of the two. But since that time, not to take anything away from Max, because he's an incredible talent, but, you know, a couple of weeks ago, IndyCar.com posted the story, Conversations with Chip Ganassi. I mean, Chip Ganassi, you look at the roster of his drivers over the years, and he's looking at this guy as the future of Ganassi Racing.
But don't forget the job Ed Jones did in his very first Indy Lights weekend in 2015. Came to the streets of St. Petersburg and dominated that weekend, not just as a rookie driver, but as a rookie team with Carlin. So the job they did right out of the gate was just astonishing, and just how much they progressed during their first year, and then obviously in their second year to get the championship on the very final lap of the race at Laguna Seca. The guy has got something special, and I think a lot of that has to do with what's in between the years, because he never really takes much risk, and that's what I like about him.
Lewis?
He didn't win Rookie of the Year at the Indy 500, and I have nothing but respect for Alonso, but he should have won the Indy Rookie.
100%.
He did more with less.
At the very least, that would have been another one of those good years to have had co-rookies of the year, which the late Larry Rice shared that honor with Rick Mears of once upon a time. I believe 1977 was that year. But Lewis, there's no question, an impressive driver roster over the years for Chip Ganassi. So he has a pretty good eye for talent, clearly.
He does. And he gets them young, so no offense, he gets a good price.
Ryan Hunter-Reay, Alexander Rossi, Scott Dixon, Simon Pagenaud, and James Hinchcliffe, your top 5. Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, Tony Kanaan, Sebastian Bourdais, Graham Rahal, the top 10, with 10 minutes remaining in this session. And Dave first is on pit road. And Dave, you've got an eye on the Harding pit?
Yeah, Gabby Chavez just came to the attention of his crew. Crew is pouring over. Everything seems to be okay after he came to a stop earlier in this practice session at the hairpin. We're going to hear from Al Unser Jr. here momentarily. Al was set to join us, and then all of a sudden Gabby came in. And obviously Al, as an executive consultant for this team and the driver's coach for Gabby Chavez, he wants to hear what kind of feedback Gabby is giving this team. So once Gabby heads back out, we will talk to the 6-time winner here at Long Beach, Alex Jr., just momentarily here, Mark.
Dave, if I were you, I'd be offended. The nerve of him to blow you off like that, Dave.
I'm pretty sure he has the key. If there is such a thing as a key to this racetrack, he would have it. So he can do whatever he wants to.
I think you need to take that up with him after the show, Dave. Okay. When we're off the air, you make sure you mention that too. Well, hopefully we'll have Al Jr. If we don't, we understand. He's a little preoccupied right now. Preparations continue for the 44th Toyota Grand Prix here at Long Beach.
Firestone presents Legendary Drives. It was the 1969 Indy 500 when Mario Andretti's crew couldn't get his right rear tire off. He had no choice but to drive on it the whole race, still finishing with a checkered flag and a drink of milk. Now that's legendary. And if Firestone tires are so dependable they can take Mario 500 grueling Indy...
Stone broadcast booth in Long Beach. This is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Just a little under 2 miles in length, 1.968 to be exact. 11 turns, 6 of them are left-handed turns, 5 right-handed turns. It rolls clockwise, of course. It's a minimum of 35 feet. The maximum width is 60 feet. And we have a car into the runoff area.
Yeah, and that's Kyle Kaiser just out braking himself a touch into turn one. Very easy to do. Experimenting with the brake zone here, just locks up that inside left front and straight on he goes. And so easy to do because you're coming from being loaded on the left-hand side of the car, and then you're trying to preload the car to set up for turn one by going over to the right-hand side of the corner, and that just offloads the inside wheel, lifts it off the ground almost, and very easy to do a lockup there.
You were pretty impressed with the weekend he had at ISM Raceway.
Man, the job he and Juncos Racing did, that was a mighty impressive effort overall, and it wasn't the finish that they maybe hoped for, but I just thought they did such a solid job altogether, and to be a rookie team with a rookie driver, single car effort, that can't be easy under any circumstance, and I've got all the respect in the world for the job they did.
Just about 7 minutes remaining in this session to give you an idea of what the rest of the weekend looks like. These will be local times. We'll be back at 2 o'clock this afternoon for another 45-minute session. And then we'll have a final practice session tomorrow from 10:45 to 11:30. And then we'll have knockout qualifying of the Firestone Fast 6 from 3:30 to 4:45. And then on Sunday, an early morning warm-up session from 9 to 9:30 before we go racing on Sunday. As we mentioned in our opening comments, a pretty busy stretch now for the Verizon IndyCar Series. We're going to welcome back this weekend, as we mentioned, the owner of the car that Jack Harvey is piloting, the number 60. Michael Shank is on pit road with Stephen Blakesley.
Yeah, welcome back to IndyCar Racing for you guys, of course. And the big announcement this week, the new ownership. Tell us about that, Mike.
Super excited about having Jim Meyer come on board as a partner to the team. We're hoping to take us to the next level here with our Sirius Auto Nation IndyCar and our sports car program, the back here. So it's a big day. I'm happy to be here. Beautiful weather. We're just getting our legs under us here, but we're going to continue pretty hard on it.
When you're a new team, I imagine every single practice session is important. You're learning new things every time on the track.
I've asked my guys, just every time, let's just be better. So if we roll off the trailer, just better. Manage expectations, but we want to be better every time, and so far we have been.
You guys have been here a lot with the sports cars. How is the feeling different with an Indy car?
Nothing. It's still tough. Either way, it's bumpy and it's tough around this place. But, I got a lot of experienced people here. We're not all new, so... we got a technical partnership with Schmidt-Peterson, and really good.
Good luck this weekend.
What's that?
Good luck this weekend.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right, Michael Shank, guys, in the 60 car with Jack Harvey.
Today first.
And catching up now with Al Unser Jr., the executive consultant for Harding Racing, and Gabby Chavez, their driver. A lot of drivers have fond memories of racetracks. I know Indianapolis Motor Speedway certainly ranks up there. When you come back to Long Beach, though, what's it like?
It's just fantastic, if you take Indianapolis out of the picture, Long Beach was my favorite racetrack of my whole career. I mean, it was always great to come out here. The fans were fantastic. The weather was always beautiful, and we won a few times, so it was great.
Take me back to 1988. First time you won here. Did you realize that, boy, this place feels A, special, and B, man, maybe I have something going on here?
When I first won here, it was a lot of work finally came through. We started running here in 84, 85. Michael and I had a great race there at the end, and I came in second. Michael won the race, and And I had just been trying so hard each year to do well here. You know, it was one of those road courses that I really tried hard at. And so finally in '88, it all came true, and it was just a great race. Yeah.
The irony is, we talked to you last week at ISM Raceway in Phoenix, that place you'd never won, but of course, Phoenix was always paired up with Long Beach. And when you came here, you dominated this place. You made up for lost time.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, you know, honestly. Because there was some years that we would race Phoenix first, Long Beach second, and then the next year we would race Long Beach first and Phoenix second. And I don't know what it was. I truly had fun here at Long Beach.
Here's the thing. I saw on social media where you and Gabby went out on a track walk, and it happens each and every racetrack we go to, just to get an idea of the lay of the land and whatnot. And I'm looking at this picture of you and Gabby, and I'm thinking, if anybody wants to give me a track walk around any racetrack, it's Al Unser Jr. at Long Beach.
Yeah, it was good. You know, Gabby, really, he thinks so much, and he's got so much raw talent that it's just, you know, when I would say, okay, this is what I did, he goes, yeah, I know. So,
he's a good student. He studies the video.
He's great. You know, what can I say? And so, like I've always been saying, he's just got so much talent. We just need to put a car underneath him that shows that talent.
Have a great weekend. Welcome back, champ.
Thank you.
Al Unser Jr., 6-time winner here in the streets of Long Beach.
Charlie Kimball in the runoff area in Turn 8. And Anders, I ran into Larry Curry in Speedway, Indiana a couple of weeks ago, and I asked Larry about how relaxed and laid back Gabby is until obviously he climbs to the race car and straps on the helmet. He says, yeah, sometimes a little too much so. Sometimes when we get out there, we get ready to go, we're like, okay, let's go get the helmet on, get the car. He's like, okay, we're fine. You know, he said, I don't want to say he's completely the opposite once he climbs into the cockpit, but they're impressed with that young driver.
Well, you have to understand, Mark, you're not a race car driver if you're not late. That's your primary duty. Other than driving a race car quickly, that's your primary duty. But no, I was so impressed with the job Gabby Chavez did with Brian Hurd Autosport in his rookie season a couple of years ago. And to bounce back into a full-time ride again, it can be so difficult when you've been out of the car for a while, only doing a couple of one-offs here and there. And then the job they did coming into the series last year on the limited run of races, the 5th at Texas, the 9th at Indy 500. I mean, a very, very small team punching well above their weight. So I think Gabby Chavez is probably the ideal person for them, someone that's not too temperamental, which is crazy considering he's South American. But anyway, he's the most laid-back South American I know, and that's exactly the fit the team needs. He's a bit like a Scott Dixon in that sense, where you're never going to have your hands full with someone screaming and yelling at you when the going gets tough. And so I think for that reason, Gabby Chavez is the perfect fit for that, in addition to the fact that he's a heck of a race car driver, of course.
Let's go back and put a period on the conversation that Dave Hurst had with Al Unser Jr. For a period of time, no one was more dominant anywhere, Louis Frank, than Al Unser Jr. was at Long Beach.
Absolutely, and he has the sobriquet, the name, the King of the Beach. And, of course, most of those wins came with Penske in an era when the Penske cars dominated. And, you know, Anders, you're a race driver. You go to certain tracks with an extra positive in your mind. You get a couple of wins under your belt. You say, I can do it again. I don't care what Newman Haas back in the day has. I got Penske. I've got power. I've got big sponsorship money. And besides, not Phoenix anymore. So. But there is certain confidence you have as a driver. You have to have all the skills, but nothing. I think, you know, and some drivers, you must feel like at some tracks you might feel snake bit, the contrary.
For sure, and the cool thing about being at a track where you seem to do well no matter what is that you can handle a couple of sessions where the car setup isn't ideal because you'll just compensate because you understand the track and you understand everything that's going underneath. And I couldn't agree with you anymore. I've certainly had a few tracks in my day that theoretically I've looked forward to so much, but for whatever reason things just haven't come together. So I completely agree with you. But yeah, Long Beach and Al Unser Jr., that's a pretty solid combo.
And back then they had a session after qualifying. Al used the expression, I'm setting up my boat. And he said, talk to me after the last practice. Don't even bother talking to me after qualifying. Talk to me. And he just felt the track. Amazing.
Scott Dixon, P1 at a 68.4112. Ryan Hunter-Reay jumps to P2. Alexander Rossi, Pagenaud, and Hinchcliffe the top five. Then Sato, Power, Newgarden, Kanaan, and Bourdais the top 10. Ray Hall 11th quick. Pickett 12th quick. Zach Veach 13th quick. Robert Wickens 14th. King 15th. Harvey 16th. Ed Jones 17th. Chilton 18th. Zachary Clayman DeMello 19th. Then Marco 20th quick. Chavez 21st. Kimball 22nd. Lace 23rd. Kyle Kaiser 24th as we see Jack Carvey has come to a stop on the course. So let's look at timing and scoring. And clearly Alexander Rossi continues to perform well out of the gate here in 2018.
Just up there yet again, but Ryan Hunter-Reay, he hasn't had the best of luck here in the first two races of the season, but he's been so quick. And then obviously Scott Dixon, never underestimate that guy. I find it interesting to see just how heavily front-loaded the Hondas are here in the front of the field. You have Simon Pagenaud in fourth, and then Will Power and Newgarden in seventh and eighth. So we know in years past Hondas have had a power advantage over the Chevys, and obviously if there's one road course, a street course that's going to show that, it's going to be Long Beach. So it'll be interesting to look at the split times after this session to see, is it a power advantage or is it just the fact that the Honda teams right now are doing a slightly better job?
Well, we know when we get to qualifying, we're going to have a new pole sitter for the first time in 3 years. Elio Castroneves, the three-peat as a pole sitter.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, thinking back to what Elio did last year, that the guy just kept raising his game, and it'll be fun to watch him in the IMSA race actually tomorrow, because I think he'll do an incredible job there. And
so he may end up on pole after all.
Exactly. So it could very well be Elio Castroneves on the pole. Granted, he'll have a roof over his head.
It's interesting, this stretch that we're in. You know, we go to St. Pete, then we get a couple of weeks off. I think we got a test date or two in here and there. But now that oval test at IMS was moved, it's a pretty brutal stretch for not only the drivers, but especially the crew guys.
Yeah, it is. And this is the one type of run where if you're on a good run and you have momentum on your side, like the Alexander Rossis of the world, this is going to fly by for you. But if you're going through a bit of a slump and you're trying to figure out what do we have to do to the cars, I'm especially looking at Carlin and thinking, man, these guys got to be wondering, what do we have to do here to keep getting better and keep progressing? So it's one of those things where if you're on top of the world, you're loving this stretch of races. But if you're not, man, it could be tough.
Good session for Scott Dixon. P1 day first, 68.4112.
Nice start to the weekend for Scott Dixon. It's a 45-minute practice session. I don't know about you in the car, but I feel like I blinked and it's already over with.
Yeah, it goes fast. I think a lot of the time, too, because, you sit around for 15, 20 minutes sometimes, too, just making sure that the track gets somewhere suitable for you to, go out and try it. But PNC car was fast right out of the box. We had a short first run and then went out and improved on the second run. And, it's a big weekend for Honda here, so we'll try and get the most we can out of it.
How much of a different track is it this year? Can you tell?
It definitely drives different just because you don't have the downforce, so the braking zones are a little bit bigger. Power down, especially out of the hairpin, is quite tough. It's quite tough to get that down, and I think, come, lap 20 or so on tires, you're going to be screaming a bit for some traction, but these cars are so much fun to drive, man. It's really cool. Obviously, such a historic place here with Long Beach, and it's nice to be pounding around the streets.
How is turn one now?
Turn one's always a bit tricky, man, but today I think the wind, was fairly decent. It's horrible when you get a big tailwind going in there, but today I think it's okay. So, just got to try and keep it off the walls, man.
Big smile for Scott Dixon. Nice way to start the weekend.
Nick Yeoman.
Let's see if we can grab a quick word with Alexander Rossi. Third in both races to start the season, and wouldn't you know, third fastest here in this first practice session. You guys, though, continue to be awful strong. Your thoughts and impressions after that first 45 minutes?
Yeah, the Napa Auto Parts Honda was good. I mean, it was really good here last year, so we knew that we had a package to roll off pretty strong, I think. But, it's always a question mark with the new aero kit, so we got a little work to do to dial it in, but I think it's a good place to start from. Obviously, Ryan was within hundreds of being P1, so I think all the Andretti cars should be pretty strong this weekend.
Is there a part of this racetrack you like more than the others? I know on street courses a lot of times you got to give up certain parts to be good in some of the other parts of the track.
Yeah, I mean, this one's a special one. I mean, it has such a good rhythm to it and flow, and they've done such a good job kind of maintaining it. So the grip is very consistent. There's not too many massive bumps. So actually, this is one of the street courses where you don't have to compromise too much. It's about as close to a road course as you can get, which is why we all love coming here.
All right, we'll let you get back to work. That is Alexander Rossi, third quick Mark Janes after practice number one.
Good stuff from Alexander Rossi with Nick Yeoman and also from Scott Dixon and Dave First. So, Lewis, again, welcome back, and you will spend the rest of the weekend, I guess, catching up and renewing some acquaintances and we'll be happy to have you back with us Sunday morning for the final warm-up.
It's been a pleasure, and yes, I want to go down to the pits and say hello to some friends.
Anders, your thoughts and impressions of this first session. What are we looking to unfold here this weekend?
Well, I actually thought the majority of teams were a little bit more racy than we anticipated. So I think everyone's just anxious to figure out this aero kit around here and exactly what they need to do mechanically. And I think we're going to see a big step up in pace, though, between this session and the next as the rubber keeps coming down and as the teams really start experimenting with more qualifying-related setups. So, Scott Dixon, though, up top, man, once he gets there, he's going to be difficult to stop.
Well, again, join us this afternoon at 2 p.m. Join us for practice session number 2. Again, your top 10, Scott Dixon, Ryan Hunter-Ray, Rossi, Pagenaud, Hinchcliffe, Sato, Power, Newgarden, Kanaan, and Bourdais. On-site production and also engineering by Rick Evans. The director of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network is Wally Levin. Our thanks to Stephen Blakesley, Dave First, and Nick Gilman for great stuff on pit road. Also, thanks to Louis Frank for joining us in the booth here for the session this morning.
This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
And there is the white flag for number 3, John Rutherford. Pick it up, Ron Carroll.
Okay, Sid, and here he comes right now from that number 25th position in the starting field. Johnny Rutherford wins, or is about to win, his first 500 over to Howdy Bell in turn 2.
I'm really happy for Johnny and Betty because they're great people, and he likes homemade strawberry ice cream, incidentally, as he heads up the backstretch to Jerry Baker.
He just now goes past us, Howdy, heading in toward number 3.
From the streets of Long Beach, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
It's older than Anders Krone. I'm talking about the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. It's the 44th season for it. I'm Mark James. Welcome to session number 2 in preparation for Sunday's race. That made you chuckle a little bit.
It did, man. Oh, man. I'm sort of lost for words right now, Mark James.
That is a rarity in the short time that I've known you.
Very often with me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about session 1. When all was said and done, everyone looking up at Scott Dixon is 68, 4-1-1-2. Hunter-Ray, Rossi, Pagenaud, and Hinch, the top 5. Sato, Power, Newgarden, Kanaan, Bourdais, the top 10.
Yeah, and I've tried getting some answers from some people in the paddock since then on whether the fact that Honda were, relatively that much more competitive than Chevy was down to a power advantage. But on neither side of the engine camp would they give me the head nod or acknowledge that. So it'd be interesting to follow in this session to see if that trend continues or if the Chevy team's up their game.
About the conversation about going into this thing, we felt like that a lot of the data and a lot of the lessons learned at St. Pete would translate. We do know Firestone brought the exact same compound for both the primary and the alternate red. So after that first session, are we under the impression that things are pretty much the same?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of transfer from one session or from one track to the other, rather. And, all the teams have basically offloaded with very similar base setups. Now, from here on, they're going to fine-tune. And what's weird is that the bumps going into the brake zone in Turn 4 at St. Petersburg and the bumps going into Turn 9 here are actually very, very similar. So I spoke to a few of the teams, and they were actually saying that the oscillations going into the brake zone is actually very, very similar between the two. So, again, the corners here in Long Beach are slightly longer and faster for the most part. So that changes things slightly aerodynamically and mechanically. But for the majority, the team said, we've offloaded with a package that's very, very similar to that of St. Pete.
Guys, you think at some point announcements about drivers and teams and sponsors and things of that nature would slow down after the unbelievable pace at which those things were announced in the offseason. But, boy, announcements continue to come. One here today as we inch ever closer toward the month of May. We're happy to have Stephen Blakesley with us here this afternoon. And, Stephen, you have a big announcement, which means 35 cars for now are already entered for the 500.
Yeah, doesn't that sound wonderful as we're standing by with all 3 of the players involved. We're going to start with the driver, James Davidson. Just announced today you're going to make your 4th Indianapolis 500 attempt. Tell us about the feeling down here.
Yeah, obviously a lot of excitement, especially being here in the pit lane in Long Beach. Yeah, it's been a long time coming to try get a opportunity to do a full program and get establishment here in IndyCar. And yeah, I think obviously after last year's race, that was a breakthrough for me, and very excited to be a part of AJ Foyt Racing with Bird, Hollinger and Bilardi. can't come soon enough.
This is quite a group of supporters that you guys have pulled together. That must feel great to have these type of people behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, just getting establishment is half the battle, and now it's come about. We've been chatting for many years now. Larry and I, it's probably about 10 years. Bird, it's 4. Bilardi's 2, and Hollinger also 2. So. Yeah, look, we've all got the same passion and goal and desire to be a part of and try win the Indianapolis 500, and we've got quite a big partnership together, and really can't wait to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to slide over here and talk to Brian Bilardi. And Indianapolis 500, just tell us what it means to you to be a part of the greatest race.
Oh, it means so much to me. I've had some opportunities to do it in the past. It just didn't feel right to be involved with A.J. Foyt Racing, Jonathan Bird Racing, both, obviously Bilardi Auto Racing, and to have a driver of James's caliber who did such a great job last year. I am really looking forward to it.
What would you say would be a good day for you guys at the 500?
Well, I haven't started putting any expectations on anything yet, but how about a win?
Well, that sounds pretty good, and we'll slide over here and talk to David Bird. And what a great partnership of a lot of different people. Tell us a little bit about how this all came together and the feeling to have such a great group.
Well, it all came together because James Davison is not only a skilled racer, but a very persuasive driver as well. So he really, I went to James after the 500 ran last year. Right after the checkered flag flew, went straight to the garage and said, "Hey, let's work on this for next year. Let's get a program together. So you're not doing this last minute because you deserve to be in a seat." So, but we had been talking about it for several years. So then, he brought Brad Hollinger to the table. James really opened the door to bringing Brian Bilardi to the table. So James is he just kept working at being persuasive, and then we put together a group of people, including our team manager Steve Moore, our engineer Kyle Brennan, and put that whole together to go to Larry Foyt and say, hey, let's make this work. So couldn't be more excited about bringing Brian to the table for his first run at the 500. He's had such great success in Indy Lights, 18 wins and 49 podiums since they started up 7.5 years ago. I think they're in their 8th season now. So it's going to be our 33rd anniversary of our first run at Indy. It's going to be if we qualify, which that's obviously the plan. It'll be our 20th successful entry into the 500. So it's all coming together. A little later than we would have liked, but I think the Foyt team's got it really going well this year. And to be partnered with AJ, back like my dad did 24 years ago, to run the number 33 again with AJ is pretty special. So can't wait for May to get here, and hopefully we're talking to you a little bit more at the Speedway.
And talk about your Indy Lights efforts this year as well.
Yeah, that was all kind of part of this. When I first talked to Brian Bilardi at the behest of James back in Mid-Ohio last year, I also said, hey, not only let's put this together for Indy, but I'd like to bring up a short track guy to the Speedway and start the process of bringing a USAC champion to the Indy 500 and trying to do that with a team that's been successful in developing drivers over the years. And obviously they've had that success there with Bilardi, and got a great team manager there with John Brunner, good teammates with Santee and Aaron Thielitz. So the right guy for that was Chris Wyndham, coming off a USAC Sprint Car Championship, a USAC Silver Crown Championship the year before that, and I think he's the right guy to now carry that torch for the short tracker, the dirt track guy coming to the Speedway, and while he's also continuing to pursue an Indy or another USAC championship, and also got his Wild Week, as we've named it, Wyndham's Wild Week for his to go along with his Indy Lights program for the Freedom 100, where he's got a very, very busy racing week, an unprecedented racing week actually. So that's looking long term. So that relationship with Brian's important because it gives us a feat in both worlds. Brings him to Indy, brings me for our family for the first time to the Indy Lights level. So we're expecting good things there, and hoping over the next couple of years we'll see the chance to bring other short track champions through that program and develop sponsors and other members of the team that can come along with that as well. Because Indy Lights is great for driver development, but it also needs to be for team development as well. And I think we're showing that now with Juncos, becoming a full-time team, and now with Bilardi taking the first step to IndyCar with the 500. And I fully expect Brian to have a a full-time IndyCar program sometime in the next couple of years.
Well, congratulations to you guys, and thanks for all you do for racing.
It's our pleasure. Thank you very much.
So what an exciting announcement. Chris Windham for the Freedom 100, but of course James Davidson in this big partnership, guys, running for AJ Foyt Racing, our 35th entry for the Indianapolis 500. Back up to you.
That's a win, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. With all of those principles and all of those pieces and parts together as we see the 22 of Simon Pagenaud go off in turn number 9. That's huge for James Davison, but huge for a guy that you and I know pretty well, Brian Bellardi, and of course, long history with the Bird family, and the late Jonathan Bird, and of course David and Jonathan, and their mom Jenny. They've done so much for motorsports and motorsports fans.
Yeah, exactly, and I've got a huge sentimental soft spot for Brian Bellardi. He's actually the guy that gave me my shot in Indy Lights back in the day, and just the passion that he has for the sport ever since he was just back as a club racer back in F2000. You could always tell this is a guy that's committed to motorsports, and the opportunities he's given to not just me during the day, but so many drivers is incredible. And so I'm so glad to see he finally has his first opportunity at the Indy 500, and I know he's going to love it, and that it certainly won't be the only time.
45-minute session, the final one of this day before an early morning session tomorrow. Kind of early here, mid-morning, I guess, is more appropriate before we go qualifying tomorrow afternoon. But to the surprise of no one, a sun-splashed day on the streets of Long Beach. Let's get the specifics on that in terms of our conditions by welcoming in Jake Query.
Good afternoon to you, Mark. It is always a pleasure to be here in Long Beach. Such a great venue, great crowd here. And, of course, as you mentioned, completely predictable that it is a gorgeous day here in Southern California. Interesting note, last night when I got in, I drove through the Beverly Hills area, and there were basically pieces of palm trees all over the famous roads, Santa Monica Boulevard and all throughout. And I noticed the palm trees tilting at literally a 45-degree angle. There were very, very strong winds in Southern California last night, upward of 50 miles an hour. That's unusual, but not, of course, present today. It is 78 degrees, 116 is the track temperature. There is not a cloud in the sky. And Anders Krohn, you could perhaps talk to this in these streets of Long Beach. You have a number of different surfaces, of course, some concrete, asphalt, and with the track temperature at 116 degrees on average, it's at its top at 120 degrees. How slick does that make things here for these drivers today?
Well, I think the really easy answer to that is pay attention to the onboard videos of the drivers. I was actually watching almost a full lap here with James Hinchcliffe, and I've never seen more corrections on a street course than what they're doing right now. I saw a very similar trait from Graham Rahal. So clearly this track is super greasy, which means that the oil in the rubber comes to the top of the surface and makes the surface so slippery. So you're exactly right, Jake, and I think right now it's more than just the surface changes. It's the fact that there is quite a lot of different types of rubbers down. There's Formula Drift rubber, and in the case of Scott Dixon here, just slightly offline, getting that inside wheel locked up and then running straight, and we've seen so many drivers do that already. And Mark, I keep looking at this and I'm thinking, is this a rerun of St. Petersburg? I mean, the amount of drivers we saw go off track and practice in St. Petersburg is basically identical to that of what we're seeing right now.
Well, I think the challenge this year, and Graham Rahal in addressing the media in between sessions addressed this a little bit because of the changes in this race car. And you referenced it this morning. Braking zones have changed dramatically. The last couple of years here with the previous incarnation of that DW12 chassis, for instance, there was a pretty pronounced bump going down that long back straightaway into turn number 9, and guys knew how to avoid that because if they didn't, the car would get airborne. They'd lose all their grip. Well, now all of a sudden that braking zone has changed, and now they're finding bumps that they're not really, familiar with.
Yeah, it's elongated the entire brake zone quite significantly, actually, because of the higher top speed, but then also because of that reduction in downforce. So that's why we're seeing so much great passing, is because the brake zones have never been more sensitive than they are now. And if you're not picture perfect on your line, an undulation in the track or a little marker or a landing strip in the case of St. Petersburg, or here we have some of the sidewalk strips coming out, and those can really throw you for a loop. So I think overall what we're seeing is driver skill come to the fore more than it ever has, and it's just brilliant being able to watch these drivers now from the outside, even just seeing how hard they're having to work at the wheel and how perfect they have to be.
15 minutes into this session, Ryan Hunter-Ray P1, Rossi, Rahal, Power, Newgarden, Bourdais, Pagenaud 7th quick, Sato, Veach, and Kanaan the top 10. Back to pit road and Jake Query.
Always fun to see some of the great race fans that come out here in Long Beach. That includes some who have been here each and every year. We'll get to that. But first, He's the pride of Cal State Fullerton, which produced a guy who went on to work for NASA. I'm talking about Jerry Stokes, who lives in the Long Beach area. And Jerry, welcome back trackside here. First and foremost, I'm curious, for a guy who worked in the space shuttle program, works with NASA, it says something that you're still impressed by and amazed by the speed of these cars.
The loveliness of this sport is it was the thing that really was a bonding thing with my father and I. Remember watching A.J. Foyt driving and winning back in the mid-'70s, and it was just our go-to thing. And to be able to have something so wonderful here in Long Beach, like the Grand Prix, all these years, it's been a real godsend for a guy that likes motorsports as much as he likes spacecraft.
Now, let me talk about what you are about to do as well. You're watching these cars on the ground, but you're about to go up in the air if everything works out, right?
Yes, I am. Got a suborbital flight that looks like we're going to be able to pull off next year. And I've been lucky enough to do what they call the Vomit Comet, the plane that simulates zero gravity, to get a taste of it. But I think the real beauty is going to be able to see Earth from space. Can't wait to do it.
And by the way, the Earth is round, right? I mean, we can clarify.
It is round. Flat Earthers, please don't even try.
All right, there we go. We'll have the proof of that. Now, here's what's fun about this. Jerry each and every year brings a different friend or somebody to come along that's a fan of IndyCar, and that includes Isabel Bustamante. Now, Izzy has been here since the very beginning for the the Grand Prix of Long Beach. And Izzy, first off, welcome back to the streets of Long Beach. This is what numbered race for you in terms of your being able to view it?
3 or 4? 40, that's right, 44 years since the first day they came. We wanted to come, and we have 3 sons, and we started bringing them to the races, and every year they wanted to come. And there was one time his dad was like about 5 years old, or maybe a little older, and we were leaving. We came by ourselves, and we were leaving, and I threw a tissue on the ground, and your dad said, "Mom, pick that up." So I had to pick it up right away. But we have been coming, my boys have been coming, and then now my grandchildren come, because we love to watch the races and Andretti, and you know what?
Now, Mario Andretti gave you a kiss a little bit ago, right? Now, that's my understanding here, okay? Now, I mean, I don't want to get anybody upset, but you and Mario have become quite friends, right?
Yes, he did, and I gave him a hug. He's always been, what do you call it, my hero, my favorite.
Well, I'll tell you what, when it comes to racing heroes, Mario Andretti, there are a lot of people that consider him the hero, but Izzy, I think it says something that Mario saw you and immediately came over, gave you a kiss, and gave you a big hug. I think it shows your dedication not only to keeping this track clean by picking up the Kleenex, but also just to show what a great event it is over the course of 44 years. We wish you the best in enjoying this particular race. You never know what you're going to see from one year to the next, so the 45th might be something new for you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm waiting for it. Yes, thank you. And I already saw Mario Andretti, and I got a kiss.
You got to love that. You got to kiss, right? That's better than going up in space. No offense to anybody here. Well, I don't know about that, but nonetheless, great to see the different folks that you see here. Mark Janes on pit road, Izzy Bustamante, and I got to tell you, 89 years young, and we look forward to seeing her each and every year when we come back here to Long Beach.
The stories that are indicative of an event that has been in existence for some 44 years. Thanks, Jake. Well done for sure. 27 minutes remaining in this session. Ryan Hunter-Reay continues to pace the field. Rossi, Rahal, Power, Newgart the top 5. Bourdais 6th quick. Pagenaud, Sato, Dixon, and Veach, by the way, a 69.1703 off of Dixon's quick time of 68.4112 in session number 1 as preparations continue for the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach.
Firestone presents Legendary Drives. Super speedways, short ovals, dry tracks, wet tracks, concrete or asphalt. The IndyCar Series is the ultimate test for a driver. And being a driver that can adapt to anything means having a tire that can do the same. That's why we build Firestone tires to handle it all. Because if they can endure all that, well, you can bet they'll bring you to victory every day. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone, the tire that drives IndyCar legends.
The road to the Indy 500 starts now.
Green, 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 green.
The Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama, presented by America's First, returns to world-famous Barber Motorsports Park April 20th through 22nd. The fastest race car drivers in the world will do battle armed with 700 horsepower and 1,600 pounds of pure thunder. Fear is not an option. Failure is the enemy. Victory is the only thing that matters. Tickets are going fast. Get yours now at barberracingevents.com.
From the Firestone broadcast booth in Long Beach, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Welcome back to the streets of Long Beach, California. Let's welcome in another member of our crew up and down Pit Road. But Ryan Marine joins us now on an announcement in Phoenix. Ryan, you're with the guy who's now sharing pace car duties in this 2018 campaign with Sarah Fisher.
Yeah, that's right. Oriol Servia joining us here. And you're taking an eye at the screen and certainly paying attention to what the Rahal Letterman Lanigan guys are doing, because you'll be driving for them in Indianapolis. We'll get to that in a moment. How about this pace car deal, though? How did this come about? You're going to be doing it again this weekend, I understand.
I am, and let me tell you, it's not that it's a hard job, but I can promise you, you can mess it up very easily. Like I did it at Phoenix for the first time last weekend. And you know, at the end of the day, you're doing 90, 100 miles an hour in a corner with a normal car, although, it was a Corvette, so obviously it's a great car. But, you're using normal tires, and it picks up some of the rubber of the IndyCar. And after 2 laps, you're driving like on top, how could I explain it, like on top of chewing gums. Like, it's just slippery all over, so you better pay attention. It's not like, that easy. So, but IndyCar did a great job directing me on the radio what to do. And again, I just hope I don't mess up the race. And jokes aside, honestly, anything I can do to help IndyCar, be safer, my fellow drivers be safer and stuff like that, it's obviously a good thing. So that's what I'm here for.
Did you get any of those butterflies that you do at the beginning of a race when you were starting the race in the pace car?
Not the exact same butterflies, but again, I just wanted to make sure I understood all the systems, because the last thing I want to do is affect the race outcome by some mistake, So, no, but it's quite different. I mean, although driving the pace car can be exciting, it's nothing like driving an IndyCar. So I cannot wait any with more excitement than May to come and start driving in Indy.
Well, let's talk about what you have going on in May. You made the announcement in St. Pete. In addition, with Rahal Letterman Lanigan, of course, the partnership with Scuderia Corsa as well. You were able to see from the seat of the pace car what this new aero kit looks like on an oval in Phoenix. Admittedly, a different aero kit than you'll run at Indianapolis. But was there anything you could learn from last weekend that you might be able to apply in May?
Well, not so much from last weekend, because as you said, it was a little bit different package. But I actually did the development last year of this car for Honda and IndyCar, so I got to run at the Speedway with the new package already, so I do know what to expect. And again, as you said, bringing Scuderia Corsa, a team that actually has won at the Speedway in 2015 in the GTD series, and obviously Bobby won before. I'm just bringing as many winners as possible in my team to hopefully take me to the winner's circle.
And one of your teammates knows a little bit about getting around that place, too.
Exactly. Taku won last year, so again, I think there's a lot of winners there, and hopefully it's my year.
Well, Oriol, thank you very much for the time. We'll let you get back to watching everything here, and good luck in pace car duties this weekend as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Oriol Servia. Ryan Marine, and it's a great announcement last week. I think a wildly popular one, because let's face who doesn't like Oriol Servia?
It's impossible not to love honestly. The guy. And I think from what he brings to the team in a technical perspective, I think he's brilliant. I think Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing is going to benefit big time from that. And just remember a couple of years ago when Oriol came in, and they were struggling early on in the season, but literally from the moment when Oriol joined the team and from that point forward, they got so much more competitive during the course of the season. And I think it's a testament to how strong he is technically and how good of a driver he is, but also he's just so charismatic. Gotta love the guy.
Yet another announcement, Jake Query, made in between these practice sessions here at Long Beach, and this one, as we see the 19 of the runoff area, that's Zachary Clayman DeMello. This one, Jake, is really very special.
Very special, and it's not necessarily new to IndyCar racing, but we'll talk about that with Stephen Wilson, who is the Director of Whiskey Engagement for Crown Royal. And, Stephen, pretty cool announcement in terms of the Wall of Gratitude. For those that are unfamiliar, let me know about it and tell me what's going to happen in May.
Jake, Crown Royal is proud to partner with Andretti Autosport to kick off the Wall of Gratitude for our second year. And the Wall of Gratitude gives racegoers 21 and older an opportunity to submit the names of their military heroes. So it could be folks that are serving currently, folks who have served, or as especially we move into May, which is Military Appreciation Month and Memorial Day weekend, those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country.
Obviously, as you had mentioned, this is not the first for Crown Royal. It will be your maiden voyage with Andretti Autosport, partnering up with Michael Andretti, Marco Andretti, and the team. Tell me about what it was with Andretti Autosport that you said, this is a good fit for us, and this is who we want to ride with in May.
Like Crown Royal, Andretti Motorsport or Autosport has always had a long-standing tradition with giving back to the nation's military and saluting them and saying thank you. And at Crown Royal, we believe in generosity. We believe in inspiring generosity in many, many forms. When you serve our country, it's one of the most selfless and generous things a person can do. So it was a great partnership to be able to come together with Michael and Marco and Alexander Rossi as well, and the entire team and family at Andretti Autosport to unveil the Wall of Gratitude here today in Long Beach and to carry that through to the Indy 500 in May.
Along with that, I want to ask you about what Crown Royal, in terms of motorsports in general, how the Verizon IndyCar Series gives you the platform in terms of the investment for you to make sure that indeed that engagement is happening. Tell me about the partnership with motorsports and just the investment overall for Crown Royal.
Well, first and foremost, with the Wall of Gratitude, it's all about saying thank you to the men and women who have served and continue to serve. Tying into the IndyCar fans, that gives us a huge platform. And one of our goals with the Wall of Gratitude this year, which ties directly back to that, is we are hoping to collect 31,680 names. These are 5-inch plaques. If you put those end to end, that is one complete lap around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. No doubt the racing community and the IndyCar community, along with the Andretti Autosport family, will help us achieve that goal. And between you and I, we're going to surpass that goal.
Okay, lastly, Stephen Wilson, let me ask you, how do people, again, make sure that they are nominating, whether it be an active military hero or someone from the past, how do they get them involved here in the Wall of Gratitude?
There's 3 ways to do it. This weekend, they can stop by the Andretti Autosport hospitality tent. During the Indianapolis 500 and the Armed Forces weekend, we'll have an activation set up at the Motor Speedway. And you can also go online at www.crownyourhero.com, and that's for racing fans 21 and older.
It's a great program, Stephen. We appreciate it on behalf of both the Verizon IndyCar Series and fans as well, not only for Crown Royal being involved in motorsports, but saying thank you, and what a weekend to do it, the Memorial Day weekend in the Indianapolis 500.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for chatting with me this afternoon, and we look forward to a great weekend here in Long Beach.
Much appreciated. Again, Stephen Wilson is the Director of Whiskey Engagement for Crown Royal. Wall.
Ryan Hunter-Ray, Alexander Rossi, Graham Rahal, Power, Newgarden, Bourdais, Pagenaud, Sato, Dixon, and Veets the top 10. Still not seeing anything in that range that we saw a little bit earlier today. That's 68, but Anders, about 18 minutes left. We might see it yet today.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle, though, because the track, I think, is greased up a lot more than any of us anticipated. There's actually been some vintage cars on track between the previous session and this one, and that's made the surface really, really difficult to handle here. And watching a lot of onboards right now, I mean, there is more opposite lock than I've seen in a long time at a Verizon IndyCar Series event. So, yeah, I think everyone here just struggling for compliance. And the difficult position the teams and drivers find themselves in now is, do we tune for the current situation, or do we have the foresight in figuring out exactly what the conditions are going to be like for qualifying tomorrow? And I think that the trap that some people can get themselves in right now is that they might adapt the car to suit these really greasy conditions, and then if the grip level significantly gets increased prior to qualifying tomorrow, that'll really throw them off their game. So I think a bit of tricky conditions to manage right now. So almost wondering if I'm a team at the moment, I'm more focused on the long run and getting compliance over the bumps.
Our good friend Jim Aiello, motorsports reporter and editor for the Indianapolis Star, reporting on Twitter that Joseph Newgarden parked the final 10 minutes of the session for being late to the weigh-in. Haven't been able to get confirmation. The folks in the Penske pit box a little tight-lipped about that, not willing to confirm it, but I guess we'll know in about 7 minutes or so if we see him either get out of the car or continue to have it parked on pit road. Happy to have with us in the broadcast booth the guy you'll hear help us with a qualifying show, and then again on race day. He's wears a lot of hats over the course of the race weekend. He takes folks around the paddock. He'll show them the hottest gear in the IndyCar merchandise area. Master of ceremonies for the pre-race festivities and pit reporter, turn announcer. You're like me. You try to be average in a lot of things, Michael Young, don't you?
I tell people, Mark James, I'm an elephant ear machine away from being a car. I do a little bit of everything, but a beautiful day. Thanks for having me up in the booth for this session. Interesting, back to what Anders was talking about, these teams chasing. I remember just a week ago in Phoenix how they kept chasing the track and the temperatures and conditions changed. They said, we're not even sure if we should be doing this at this point because we really don't know where we're really going, and we're going to find ourselves further off the balance that we'll need for that race setup. And as you had said, conditions have changed dramatically since that morning session, and it's extremely warm compared to where it was this morning. And you said, and you can see just the various portions of this track, it's really greased up. And although there's a lot of rubber down, it really hasn't bode well for these drivers and these teams trying to find that traction that they need.
Yeah, it's been super difficult for him here, and as a result of that, I think that's why you're only seeing 3 drivers out on reds right now, and Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, and then Kyle Kaiser. So it'd be interesting to see over the next few laps if everyone does in fact go for a quali sim, or if anyone saves it for the final practice session, because at the moment these conditions are looking very, very tricky.
Michael, let's go back to Phoenix. Pit road, obviously, it's a make-or-break place for sure. Surprising to see back-to-back incidents like we had early in that race. Essentially ruined an opportunity for what could have been a promising night for Sebastian Bourdais. What Alexander Rossi then said about the task of doing to get on the podium for the second of the first 2 races of the season, I think it's just a reminder of just how very, very dangerous that place can be if you don't have your head on the swivel, as they say.
And that is certainly the case. We heard from Tony Kanaan that he couldn't even find where his box was, so they really had to wave that lollipop at pit entrance there. So he knew where his pit box was. He just had a tough time finding the pit lane and their box that they had to go into. I think the most ironic thing, or just the odd thing, was that it was Alexander Rossi and Sebastian Bourdais, 2 seasoned veterans, the last people you think would have those types of issues. And I think to the extent that Sebastian Bourdais was heartbroken that it happened, I think he felt so tremendously bad about making contact with one of his crew members. It just shows how rare it happens, and when it does, the concern that they have for the crews. And that was one of those situations that when we got into the race, and there were so many great stops in that race, but to have that happen so early, but more importantly for Alexander Rossi to be able to bounce back. I talked to his spotter after the race was over. We were just rehashing the race, talking about it. He goes, I think we passed probably the field twice by the time that race was over.
Well, I think the numbers at IndyCar released something like 53 passes during the course of that race by Alexander Rossi, which is an incredible number, most assuredly. I think, though, you go back and look at what the race encapsulated in a nutshell was Ed Jones brought out the caution late. Newgarden, Tim Cindric, they make the call with him to get him onto pit road. I'm not sure Joseph needed to do that, but he did. Obviously, it was the right call because it was somewhat reminiscent of the call that Andretti Autosport made a few years ago late in the race with Ryan Hunter-Reay in Iowa.
I don't think, if we had to replay that race over, I still don't think they would have brought Alexander Rossi in. As much as he had done with that car, I think they were comfortable with it. If to do over again, I think Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports would have brought one of the two and probably James Hinchcliffe in. If they had an opportunity to redo that race, he was the guy they probably brought in just to get them off strategy and give themselves 2 more opportunities.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was actually talking to Joseph just a little bit ago, and I said, in your heart, did you feel safe about that decision? And he said absolutely not. But what he felt is if they hadn't pitted, he feels like the Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports duo would have done. So he feels like they would have done regardless of what Joseph would have done, he feels like they would have done the exact opposite. And so Tim Cindric's decision was that if it's going to be a fight till the end, I want my guy on fresh rubber.
And
but man, oh man, I was protesting here in the booth. I was
big
protesting. But he made for such a great ending to the race. I mean, it was spectacular.
I think, to your point and what Joseph had said, the leeriness he had of coming in and getting those fresh Firestone Firehawks, the pass that he made into turn one, getting around a couple of cars, for as tough of a place as Phoenix was for getting around making passes this past weekend, boy, he made a bonsai move, if you will, just to get himself in position to set himself to get around Robert Wickens.
He did, and he knew he had that one shot to do it, because as he obviously had new tires, but those peak very early. So the moment the peak is lost, then you don't have the chance to do that. So he knew he had those 2-3 laps to get the job done, and boy, did he do it. But that was some hairy
More
stuff.
on the situation involving Joseph Newgarden, courtesy of Bruce Martin. The penalty of Newgarden being parked the last 10 minutes announced in the media center. We got the information on Twitter first from Jim Aiello, but obviously Jim got it from IndyCar when they announced that in the media center. So Joseph Newgarden will indeed miss the final 10 minutes of this session, but he's made the most of his time. For a moment there, he was up to P1. Now we're seeing those 68 start to pop up on the screen.
Yeah, exactly, but it's taken so long. I mean, the quickest one was a 108.4 or 68.4 in the previous session, and now they're stickering up with reds and still, not able to get down to that time. So it just shows how tricky the track is right now with a very, very light air, not a lot of saturation in the air, very low downforce levels. And that's obviously the hallmark of this new car, is there's a lack of overall downforce, which is what everyone wants to see. But then when it's hot air and when it's a greasy track, makes that even more exaggerated.
Is this session, the importance of it amplified by the fact that at local time it's from 2 to 2:45? We qualify at 3:30 tomorrow. We race at 1 o'clock on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of correlation there. But really what you need to look at is what sessions are going to be before IndyCar. And the answer to that is that's the IMSA race. And so there's going to be an entire 2-hour-long IMSA race with Michelin rubber, with Continental Tire rubber. There's going to be all these different tire manufacturers putting down rubber. So if we think the track is greasy now, it's probably going to be that amplified even more for qualifying. So I think if I'm a team right now, I'm going to take the approach, we have to expect that the track is going to be like ice in qualifying tomorrow. And what you typically do when the track is slippery as it is, and big moment there for Alexander Rossi, what you typically do is you soften up the car, just enable as much compliance over every little bump to enable the tires to get into the grain of the asphalt through every single corner. And if you oversprung the car, that basically means you're just floating on top of the surface. And as a driver, it gives you no confidence. The tires come up to temp really quick, but after they've come up to temp, there's no grip to support it whatsoever. And I think that's the razor edge. Everyone wants to run the car as stiff as possible to be able to lower it, to increase the downforce level, but at the same time, you got to have the compliance over the bumps. And again, that is why I'm so in love with this new car, is because it is so tricky to get it into that window, and you can physically see the drivers. If they're having an issue, you know exactly what issue they're having because of their hands.
How much pressure on these teams with just 2 very short 45-minute sessions on a day like today? They have one tomorrow before they get to qualifying. It just means you got to maximize those sessions.
It's huge, but I mean, I think that's so much better because that gives the teams and drivers less opportunity to find the ideal setups. It just means they have to be picture perfect when they offload. And this moment here from Alexander Rossi, perfect case in point, grabs about 2 to 3 inches too much of that curb inside turn 1, and that's enough to offload the right rear corner and send him almost into the wall there. And he's a lucky boy not to bite that wall.
So Stephen Blakesley, even though everybody's tight-lipped in the Penske box, you can confirm that Joseph Newgarden is indeed climbing out of that race car?
Yeah, we're standing about 5 feet to his right as he's taking the helmet off now. We'll see if we can get a word with Joseph Newgarden here. Obviously a pretty strong effort nonetheless here in this second practice today. And Joseph heading back to debrief with his team now, but he is definitely out of the car, guys.
Let's go up pit road to Jay Query.
It mentioned earlier, Michael Young had mentioned, Mark, the fact that Tony Kanaan, just the importance of trying to find one's pit stall on this pit road. We say it every year, but I think it's worth pointing out. This is one of the more interesting and challenging pit roads that we see over the course of the Verizon IndyCar Series season because it is so incredibly narrow over the wall. This is, of course, a city street, and it's a city street that has a long curve and bend, so it would be very easy to miss your spot. But as we've talked about in the past, Mark, should any situation arise where the team would have to perhaps even go back, and obviously you would plan for this not to happen, but if you were to bring or need anything to your pit road on race day that is not already here, it is a long, long haul to try to work your way through. And I just think that this one presents as much a challenge, and probably actual pit sequence here in terms of the order is as important at Long Beach as anywhere we go over the course of the season.
Yeah, and I think another key point to that is because of the tire degradation is so much more prevalent now than compared to the old Aero kit. That means these guys are entering pit lane with tires that are so much more worn than they have in years past. And so what that means is they have to be extra cautious when they come in. But as a driver, that's so difficult to do because you're coming in there high in adrenaline. You're trying to maximize your in-lap. And then you don't realize that there isn't rubber down in that pit lane, and there's nothing really to help support you there. So that's made that even more difficult. And we saw it at ISM Raceway, certainly, and we could very well see it here again.
And you talk about that pit, or the tire degradation, I should say. Let's again repeat, 7 sets of tires, the primary black tires for each team this weekend, those Firestone Firehawks. Then those softer compound red tires, 4 sets per team. Those tires, a little bit more immediate speed on them because they're kind of worn in, if you will, but they don't last near as long, Anders, so there's some strategy that goes into play. The rookie teams will get themselves an extra set of those Firestone Reds, but once again, figuring out exactly when to maximize what those quote-unquote broken in, if you will, or a little bit softer tires, when to take advantage of them on race day becomes a major strategy here.
Yeah, and it's such a difficult balance there as well, because as a driver, as a rookie driver, you want to try and maximize the red tires as much as you can, but if you overpush like we just saw Kyle Kaiser do here, and Scott Dixon running wide, exiting turn 6 there, but yeah, if you overpush, then you flat spot your tires, and then you essentially lose that set of tires. So as a rookie driver, very, very difficult to manage that, and I think we're going to see an intriguing race just because of that, and how quickly the red tires fall off. And obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if we see someone roll the dice to start on the blacks, even though they don't come in as early. That might enable them to stretch their first pit window even longer. So, again, loving the fact that there is way more tire strategy into play than there is fuel strategy, and I think that makes the racing way better.
Under 5.5 minutes remaining in this practice session, final one of the day for the Verizon IndyCar Series. Preparations continue. It's the 44th Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach.
Firestone presents Legend.
Lots of good stuff from pit road today. Let's keep it going with under 4 minutes to go in the session. Go back to Ryan Marine.
Ryan Hunter-Ray has been tops of this session for the vast majority of it, recently surpassed by his teammate Alexander Rossi. He just went out and did his first sticker red run of this session, presumably getting ready for qualifying. Came in and made some pretty significant changes at the rear of that DHL Honda, spring changes in particular, so perhaps making some of the changes that Anders talked about earlier. After that, they put the car back down on those now scuffed reds, and they sit it back out. So certainly Ryan Hunter-Ray trying to find a bit more pace on the red tires. Didn't like exactly what he had on that race car in his first run on the reds.
Via YouTube or Facebook, somehow, someway, we have to get a camera in this booth so you folks at home can get the reaction of the body language from Anders Krohn when he watches some of these replays, like the one we just watched with Sebastian Bourdais through turn 8.
Holy moly, Sebastian Bourdais, you should be in the Formula Drift Championship. That was a wild save in turn 6. And let me tell you, what's not visible on the screen is just how off camber it is. So that corner, if you don't have your line perfect, you just completely lose the grip on exit. So the moment he went into that corner, he would have already realized, oh dear, I am in deep trouble here. And he did a tremendous job saving it. But no, to answer your question, we do not need a camera in here because I do get slightly too animated, Mark James.
Alexander Rossi is P1, as you heard moments ago, for Brian Marine. His teammate Ryan Hunter-Reay is second. Joseph Newgarden third. Power is fourth. Rahal is fifth. Bourdais, Pagenaud, Piggott, Kanaan, and Sato the top 10. Dixon 11th. Veach is 12th. Hitch is 13th as we see the 4. Mateus Laced in the runoff area. Then Jack Harvey is 15th. Quick, need to slip Marco in there at 14th. 16th is Max Chilton. 17th is King, each back in the 20 car. Enjoyed having him in the booth with us in Phoenix, by the way. He's running that car on the road and street courses for Ed Carpenter. Robert Wickens, 18th quick. Jones is 19th, and Kimball, Kaiser Laced, Clayman DeMello, and Gabby Chavez. 24 cars entered. And Michael Young, earlier today, Anders Krohn and I were talking about, you can go all the way back to the second half of last season, and I think really it started with that dominant performance at Watkins Glen. I think it was at that very moment it seemed as though that Alexander Rossi was trying to establish himself as a championship contender in 2018.
It was interesting. Pre-race ceremonies on the stage. I asked Alexander in Phoenix, and this was kind of, we try to have fun on that pre-race stage. I asked Alexander, you've won Indianapolis 500 your rookie year. You won at Watkins Glen your second season, but you really hit a momentum. How have you changed as a person and as a driver? He goes, wow, that's a deep question. And he thought for a second and said, I want it. I want it now. And you can just see the way he drove the latter part of 2017 and how he started off the first 2 rounds of this 2018 season, even in this second practice session of the 3rd round. He wants it now, and you really see what a brilliant driver he is.
Well, the second half of the season, after he won the 500, there was still no guarantee as we've got contact out on the course. Looks like it might be it is Takuma Sato. We were getting ready to go to pit road for a comment from Stephen Blakesley on Takuma Sato as we get the red and the checkers at the same time. He was up to 4th quick when that incident happened. Rahal was 8th quick, but more about Alexander Rossi. For a while after he won the 500, there was no guarantee that he was going to even stay in the Verizon IndyCar Series.
And there was that moment. I don't remember what was the latter part of the season that something had happened, and he just said, this is where I want to be, or this is where my future is. And I don't know if it was the fact that he couldn't find anything else the latter part of the season, and we never really found out exactly what it was, but he said, this is where I'm going to be. I don't think he ever used the word want to be, but where I'm going to be. And it was about halfway through last year that you really saw him come to the occasion.
Anders Krohn, you've had an opportunity to take a couple of looks at the single-car incident involving Takuma Sato in Turn 1.
Yeah, and I've seen this incident happen many times before. You just carry a bit more speed into Turn 1. The car is already on the edge, and then you sneak onto that inside curb, and that just swings the rear of the car around, and then in turn slams the front end. So that's actually a rather large incident here for Takuma Sato. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some gearbox damage there, because the way he hit there, it looked like the drive shaft got put straight into the gearbox. So hoping, obviously, for the RLL team that they won't have too lengthy repairs to that, but that's certainly a big hit there, and again, just how difficult these cars are to drive on the edge.
As we mentioned, Joseph Newgarden, Jake Query missed the last 10 minutes of this session. Nonetheless, he's P3.
He knew going into it was going to be an abbreviated session, Joseph Newgarden, that 10 minutes for not being on time for the weigh-in. So first and foremost, did you get out of the session what you needed to, knowing that you were not going to be out there for the last 10?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wish we could have done the last 10 minutes. I was talking with fans, you know. That's why I was late. So, you know, it's my fault that I missed it, though. And, yeah, but to answer your question, I think so. I think we still got good running. We ran plenty. We just didn't get our second run on reds. It's really what hurt us. You know, normally you like to see what the drop-off is or what the balance shift's going to be on used tires. That's really all we missed. So I think we got an idea of where we were, where we need to be better, and hopefully we can utilize that for tomorrow to try and get a little bit closer.
The street courses are interesting because, you know, you never know from one year to the next what may be different, I would assume, in terms of grip. How was it out there today? What is new? What new challenges came about here at Long Beach?
Well, a lot of it's similar. You know, Long Beach hasn't changed. I think the track itself is very, very similar to last year. There's no pavement differences. Less than significant. But the car itself is quite a bit different, like we've talked about all year. So just trying to figure out what we need here. It's going to be the case everywhere we go, figuring out what the car needs for a street course. And every street course is a little different. What we need here is different from St. Pete. And so, trying to get power down is difficult. This car is a lot harder to do that. And I think we're making progress on the setup of how we achieve that without, adding too much compromise. You try and add traction to the car. Normally it weakens the front. So there's always a compromise with what you're looking at. But I feel pretty good with our Verizon car. I think it's close. We just got to be a touch closer.
Appreciate the time. Best of luck in qualifying.
Thanks, man.
That's Joseph Newgarden, the guy who was the fastest in this session. Stephen, you got him, Alexander Rossi.
Yeah, California driver nonetheless. I'm from Sacramento. He's from Grass Valley. The driver, or Nevada City, I should say. The driver is Alexander Rossi, and P1 in practice. How does that sound?
That's good. It's obviously where you want to end up at the end of Friday, and to have two team cars 1-2 is pretty awesome. So we have a lot of motivation after last year to come back and be really strong, and there's a lot of work ahead of us, and hopefully we can continue that through the next 2 days.
I know it's early in the season, but twice in recent history, the winner of this race has gone on to win the series title, and you guys obviously have good expectations this season. This would be a great way to get that run started.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of irrelevant at this point. We're trying to win Long Beach and, like I mentioned before, kind of get redemption on last year. So that's our main focus right now. And, we've got 3 races in 3 weeks here. So it's just about maximizing these as best as we can. And right now, the only thing we're focusing on is Long Beach.
Well, good luck in qualifying tomorrow.
Thank you.
Alexander Rossi, guys, and a real quick point on Takuma Sato. He had run 6th in the first practice. Both Sato and his Rahal Letterman Lanigan teammate, Graham Rahal, were both on qualifying runs on sticker reds. And Sato had moved his way up to 4th, and Rahal had slipped down to about 8th, I believe, on the final rundown. So Sato was on a pretty flying lap there when he had that incident. Back up to you guys.
And unfortunately, it's going to make a long night for his crew, Anders.
Yeah, it is indeed. And getting to inspect that car a little bit more, there's some significant damage to the right rear there, and potentially some gearbox damage. So obviously not what they wanted, but tremendous speed here being showed by the RLL guys. But the thing I'm paying attention to the most right now is the gap between Alexander Rossi and Ryan Hunter-Reay to the rest of the field. I mean, it's almost 4/10 to Joseph Newgarden, and around a track that's only 1 minute and 8 seconds, that is a significant gap, and just shows you how well dialed these Andretti Autosport cars are right now. So the other teams have some figuring out to do if they're going to be able to catch Andretti in greasy conditions tomorrow afternoon.
Rossi, Hunter-Reay, Newgarden, Sato, Dixon the top 5. Power, Hinchcliffe, Rahal, Bourdais, Pagenaud the top 10. Piggott, Kanaan, Veach, Wickens, and Marco Andretti the top 15. Harvey is 16th, Chilton 17th. King 18th, 19th Jones, 20th Kimball, 21st Kaiser, 22nd Lace, 23rd Clayman DeMello, 24th Gabby Chavez. Our day is done here, but a busy day tomorrow. We'll have our first practice session at 10:45 local time, and then go qualifying at 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. Then on Sunday morning, join us at 9 a.m. local time for the final 30-minute warm-up session before we go racing Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. We want to thank Stephen Blakesley, also Ryan Marine and Jake Query for their outstanding stuff from Pit Road. A lot of announcements between the 2 practice sessions, and I think we certainly got everything covered. We also want to thank Michael Young for joining us in the broadcast booth and look forward to his contributions throughout the course of this weekend. Our on-site producer and engineer is Rick Evans. The director of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network is Wally Levin. For Anders Crone, I'm Mark James. So long for now from the streets